welcome, welcome. It's great to be back. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to 2024-2025 session of the WCEG Network on the WCEG Talk Radio. We are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. I am Dr. Babs. I'm a physician and owner of Life Wellness, a membership-based, holistic, and integrative direct primary care practice in Marietta, Georgia, where I provide full spectrum family medicine services for individuals. I am honored today to be your show host for this evening segment of the Holistic Perspective Show. I have a wonderful guest. She is going to be my co-host, and her name is Jane Guo. I am thrilled that she's joining us today. So a brief summary about her. She is a registered dietitian, and she's the owner of Habits Nutrition Counseling, where she empowers her clients to achieve lasting weight loss through realistic and attainable lifestyle changes. So I'm truly honored that she's with me today. We're both here to enrich you with information that will be both inspired, just inspire you as well as impactful. So November is National Diabetes Awareness Month. So we thought that it would be appropriate to talk about the food myths that are out there, right? There's so many, and it can really be mind-blowing. So we really have an expert in our midst. She's going to share a lot of nuggets about how we can empower ourselves, whether it's pre-diabetes or diabetes. But the question I want you to think about as we go through this session today is, what is your role? What role do you play in decreasing the narrative around the increase of pre-diabetes or diabetes within your community? Our goal together this evening is to discuss a few stats, because the numbers have gone up around diabetes, pre-diabetes. We're also going to talk about treatment with lifestyle options. So yes, as a family doctor, I do treat, but both of us agree that there are lifestyle interventions that can make a big difference. We're going to talk about food myths and just facts, and then of course commonly asked questions. But before we get to that, please tag a friend, share with your neighbors that we're on right now. We're live on all social media streams, name it, Facebook, YouTube, WCEG Talk Radio Network. So you don't want them to miss out. So please go ahead and share. We also have an app. So yeah, all platforms we're available. So we are here to make a meaningful impact. Two quick important announcements before we get started. The information shared on this talk radio is not intended as medical advice, all right? We're not privy to your own specific needs. So this is just to provide some education to empower you to have those deeper conversations with your healthcare provider. And the second thing is that the views and opinions expressed by either myself, my co-host, and other guests doesn't necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the WCEG network and management. Now, of course, we always like to start with a quote, right? So the one I want to talk about today, it says, from somebody that had diabetes, it says, "We have diabetes. It gets to come along with us, but it doesn't get to stop us." And this was by Chris Oslin. So really good one. I think we can get started. I want to welcome my co-host. Welcome, and let's get started. Share a little bit about just you and, why diabetes, how you began this whole journey.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Dr. Babs. So my name is Jane. I'm so happy to be here to talk to you about diabetes. I own a virtual nutrition practice where I specialize in weight management and also diabetes. And I want to point out one thing you said earlier, Dr. Babs, that I think is such a great message. You said, "What is your role?" You want the listeners to think about, what is your role in decreasing the severity or decreasing your risk of diabetes in this, while the statistics are ever so more increasing. Because when I was preparing for this segment, you saw I had a bunch of statistics written down, and they all say, diabetes is on the rise in every population, and especially in marginalized communities. But wording it that way, what you said earlier, I think that really puts the power back in the people, back in the individual, to do something about reducing their risk of diabetes. And you do have a lot of control over your risk factors, and that's hopefully something that you'll take away from this segment tonight.
Yes, and I'm so glad that you're on this platform with me to share this impactful message that just because there's a genetic factor or because there's an increase in the number of diabetes, it doesn't mean that we need to be hopeless about it, right? So we're going to have this conversation together. Can you share a little bit about the statistics and a little bit about what numbers do you see in your experience? What does that look like? I know in my practice, I do have quite a number of patients that have diabetes. And unfortunately, I think a few years ago, my youngest patient, type 2 diabetes, was in a 9-year-old patient. So tell us with your what are you seeing and what does that, and we're not giving these numbers to scare anyone. It's just so that people understand that this is increasing. And that's why a session today will be meaningful for people to understand what will be the next steps. How can we prevent it? And if you already have it, what can you do to treat it and not prevent it from getting worse?
Absolutely, yeah. So some of the surprising numbers that I found were that it's not just in the US. Diabetes is increasing in prevalence worldwide, and and then when you break it down into classifications based on demographic and ethnicity, it's also jarring to see that diabetes is disproportionately affecting American Indians, non-Hispanic Black adults, Hispanic adults, and then some Asian American adults thrown in there as well. And even when you even when you look at children, it's also increasing. I don't work with children, I mostly work with adults, but I was surprised to see that those numbers have increased in children as well. It used to be that diabetes used to be called like type 1 diabetes used to be associated with youth, with children. Most of the time it would occur in children, but now we have to specify, if we're talking about a child having diabetes, is it type 1 or type 2? Because type 2 is now ever more increasing. So those are, again, those numbers, like Dr. Babb said, they're not to scare you. They're just to show you the reality of what's happening right now, but you do have the power to change that about your own individual health.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned just the diversity, right? So it's not just in the US, because a lot of people think when we're talking about these numbers, we're talking about the US, but it's worldwide. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I know that there's an increased prevalence. So I guess let's talk about, generally speaking, type 1 is 10 to about 15% of the population. Meanwhile, type 2 is 90 to about 95% of people, right? In terms of type 2. And I guess to distinguish it, type 1, it's really where patients are either born with it or they just don't have any form of insulin. And insulin pretty much is the hormone that helps to regulate glucose, right? We all have to eat to live. And so when we eat, right, it's like a knock on the door for the pancreas to secrete insulin, and the insulin helps to regulate the sugar out of the bloodstream into the cells that is needed. And type 2, on the other hand, is unfortunately insulin resistance. If the insulin is just not getting the message the way it's supposed to for several reasons, can you share a little bit from your practice? What would be some of those reasons that people will have type 2? I know commonly in my practice, unfortunately, diet is number one culprit. There's not understanding, and that's why we're going to talk about food myths today, right? So that we don't get all confused. But certainly nutrition is one. Can you share a little bit of other reasons why there's that increase of insulin resistance and type 2?
Absolutely. So nutrition is a huge part of it, but it's not the only story. And that's the part that I mostly work with as a dietitian is we got to get your nutrition under control if you have diabetes, and that usually will help your A1C and your blood levels of sugar. But that's not the whole story again. The other stuff that can affect diabetes is, do you sleep okay? Do you smoke? Uh, are your stress levels really high? How are the relationships with the people in your life? All of these, and I love that you practice as a doctor, that you practice from a holistic perspective, because all of these things need to be examined if we're going to look at if we want to really improve your health.
Yes, yes, yes. And again, as a dietitian, you have all the skill sets to really hone on nutrition as the foundation of health. I've seen several patients, and I'm sure you have too, just emphasizing the nutrition and understanding how to eat, what to eat, and when to eat really empowers people. I've seen it personally and in my family where people have had A1Cs as high as 12, being able to change that and reverse because of the power of food. And just for the listeners, in case you're wondering, what do we mean by A1C? A1C is just pretty much checking the level of sugar over a 3-month period. Well, our cells really replenish themselves every 3 months. So it gives us an idea of how much of sugar, glucose, is attached to your cells before it replenishes over 3 months. So anything greater than 6.5 is considered diabetes. And we certainly want, if we're talking about pre-diabetes, is anywhere 5.7 to 6.4. So those are numbers, just so you're aware, and you want to ask this question of your healthcare provider. We're coming to the end of the year. Please have it checked. If it hasn't been checked, just ask your doctor or ask your healthcare provider, what is my A1C? We listened to a show with a dietitian and a family doctor, and they said we should ask. So please ask these questions, because once you know better, you can do better. So let's dive in a little bit. Let's start with the nutrition. I think we can talk a little bit about, especially in your areas of expertise, what are some of those food myths you can talk about and some food facts? And then after we talk about nutrition, then we can talk about the other things that you talked about that could be an impact in either causing diabetes or making it worse.
Yeah. So this is how it usually goes when people come see me, for especially when you just got diagnosed with diabetes, your doctor just gave you that news, and you go home feeling really overwhelmed. And it's understandable. That's news that we think that could never happen to us. Right? So you're overwhelmed. They probably gave you a handout, probably didn't have enough time to really go over what to do when you have diabetes. So they probably sent you home with this handout. Here you go. This is a food list. So you're looking at the food list. You're like, oh, no carbs. Man, I can't have sweets anymore.
No.
I can't have potatoes, pasta. These are my favorite foods. And then add on top of that, if you are someone with food sensitivities or food allergies, you already have a list of foods that have to be excluded from your diet. Then you get piled on with a diagnosis of diabetes. What can you eat? There is nothing, it feels like there is nothing left for you to eat. So between a lot of people will see me maybe a week or two after they hear that news from their doctor. They will make that appointment with me. There's a little bit of a wait time. And in that 2 weeks, it's like the most miserable 2 weeks of someone's life. And then when they come see me, they actually walk away feeling a lot of relief, because they're thinking they're coming to see me, and I'm just gonna reiterate, yeah, don't eat this, don't eat that, you can't have this anymore, your life is gonna be miserable. They dread that appointment with me.
Yeah.
And they actually walk away feeling like, oh my gosh, I do have a lot more options that I didn't know that I could have. And the thing with eating for diabetes, it is less about what you can have and what you can't have, and more about how to eat those foods, what to combine it with in order to make it a more diabetes friendly meal. And so let's get into some of those ways that we can make meals more diabetes friendly. And I'll kind of go on theme with our myths. The theme of today's segment is myths with diabetes and food. One of the most common myths that I see floating around out there is that you can't eat fruit.
Mhm.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Fruit, most people have that misconception because fruit, it does have sugar. And so they're like, oh, I have diabetes. I can't have anything to do with sugar, and fruit has sugar, so I can't have it. Then you're missing out on such a nutrient powerhouse. Fruit has so many different nutrients in it that aren't sugar. It has vitamins, it has fiber, and then actually that fiber that comes with the fruit sugar, it actually helps your blood sugar not get too high. So
Mhm.
fruit is absolutely a great thing to eat. But again, it's less about what you eat, it's more about how you eat it. So if you're going to eat a whole watermelon in one sitting, that's probably not a great idea, and that's really going to skyrocket your blood sugars. But if you have a decent portion of watermelon, and then maybe let's pair that with something else that has a little bit more different nutrients, like I want to pair it with maybe like walnuts. That's going to give you some more fiber, some protein, some fats in those walnuts, and that combination of different nutrients is what's going to help stabilize your blood sugar.
Yes, I love that you said that. And when you said a watermelon, I thought about my son because, oh my God, that child can eat up a whole watermelon. He loves it. And we are sweet tooths in our home, but we've learned the power of pairing up and making sure that we're not eating food naked. That's the word we say. I always remind him, I'm like, don't eat it naked. You can have it. It's better. But like, but mom, it's better than a cookie. I'm like, yes, it is. But you don't want to eat just that alone. So I love that you said that. So it's less about what you eat, right? But how you eat it. Is that what you said? I think that's key. And all the listeners, please hear it. Please, please, please hear it. Because I hear it all the time. I can't eat fruits. I've been told I can't eat fruits. That is not true. It's how much of it you're eating, how you're eating it. I promise you, any day, anytime, it's still better than the added sugar cookies that you're eating because fruit is natural. It's from the soil, right? So you can eat it. Now, I do agree that there are some things that are higher glycemic index. And what I just mean is that how high it spikes your glucose. But again, it's natural sugar. If you're eating it, a fiber rich fruit, right? You have the fiber, which slows down, just like Jane said, it slows down how quick your glucose is spiked. So it's definitely one that please make sure you have your fruits because you're missing out on the powerhouse, as she mentioned, all the antioxidants, all the nutrients, all the fiber, all those things are very helpful for the body. Certainly more helpful than any cookie or any donuts ever will be. So, okay, what other myths are out there that you know of that you've heard?
Well, another one I hear is, oh, I can't have any dessert, any sweets anymore. And we were talking about this the other day, Dr. Babs. You have a sweet tooth, and then you told me the strategy that you do. Can you share that strategy with everyone?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, again, there are times where I wish I wasn't born a sweet tooth, but that's a story. That's a topic for another day. But what I've learned is learning how to eat, when to eat, right? So, for instance, I could still have if I want a brownie, I could have my brownie, but I don't start with my brownie because that would just spike my glucose off. So, what I do is I have my fiber, right? So, I love eating veggies. I love to make it fun. So, sometimes I could put, I put some strawberries, blueberries. I know there's some people that don't like fruits in their veggies, but I love to have that in my salad. But the important thing for me is that I could still have my sweets, but I just make sure that I eat the nourishing foods first, like the protein, the veggies. So I have a rule where I say veggies first, protein next, my water, and then my dessert. So that's the way I have it. And I realize that when I eat that way, I'm actually full. So I'm not eating the whole brownie. I'm just taking a taste. So I don't feel like I'm restricting myself compared to my past life where I had all the chronic diseases that I was able to reverse, was that I will start with my dessert and then I'll eat a whole bunch of it. But as you know, right, you can say from your experience and what you've seen is that when you eat all these things and it spikes your glucose, you feel the satisfaction, you drop, and then you're hungry again, and then you want more. So that's my trick. I don't know if this is something that you've heard with any of your clients or your patients.
Yeah, and that trick is something I teach as well. And there's actually a physiological reason why that works. So earlier you were explaining a little bit about what happens when you have diabetes and like the digestive process. So
Mhm.
here's what happens when you eat something that is pretty much straight sugar. Like let's take that brownie for example. That brownie has it's pretty much a lot of sugar, no fiber, no protein, no maybe a little bit of fats in there from the butter. But when that hits your stomach by itself, and this is what you were referring to as a naked carb, when it's by itself, it's gonna get digested in your stomach. It's going to get pretty, digested and absorbed pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And when it gets absorbed into your blood really quickly like that, that's what we mean when we say that's a blood sugar spike.
Yeah.
What happens when the blood sugar spike is you get this upward, going up really fast, coming down really fast. Sometimes you come down too far, then you get that crash.
Mm.
That crash never feels good. Right. So have you ever experienced that feeling where you're just very low energy after having that brownie? You're like, what?
Yes, I felt it. There was a time when I used to eat Snicker bars. It was so addictive, believe me. And I would always have a headache. And I was like, why am I always having a headache after? I mean, I'll feel great with a Snicker bar, right? I get my dopamine hit. And I don't know, are you a sweet tooth at all, Jane? Are you, or you do enjoy sweets? Because some people don't enjoy sweets at all. But I would have the Snicker bar, one Snicker bar. I remember when I was studying to get into residency. And every evening I would have a headache. And that's because of what you just talked about, the spike. And it doesn't feel good. And it took me a minute to realize that that was what I was doing. And I had to slowly cut back on it. But now I'm glad that I don't eat the Snicker bar because I found something to replace it. Some bananas with peanuts around it and freeze it. And it tastes like a Snicker bar. And then, of course, that doesn't spike and doesn't give me headaches.
And the reason why is because that banana has fiber. You got peanut butter on there, so that has protein and healthy fats.
Yes.
And what that does when you're digesting all of that together is it kind of envelopes the sugar, so to say, to make that sugar a little bit like a slow release, the slow release
Yes.
capsules. It makes sugar release into your blood a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So then you don't get that really fast increase, really fast decrease, that spike. You get more of a steady hill. It's gonna increase. That's normal for your blood sugar to increase. But what we don't want is this super dramatic increase and decrease. And that is what causes that crash. But when you have that steady increase, steady decrease, you don't get a crash.
Yes,
And
yes.
so your strategies that you talked about, like eating the banana instead of a Snicker bar, the banana with the peanut butter, that's what you're doing is you're pairing that carbohydrate,
Mm-hmm.
which the banana is a carbohydrate, with a protein or fiber or healthy fat. The more combination of the more you have on, you can pair a carb with just a protein, that would work. You
Yeah.
can pair a carb with just a fiber, and that would help as well. You can pair that carb with a healthy fat, and that would also work. But the more of the three food groups that
Combination.
you have, the better it works at preventing that crash.
Very good. And I think this is so helpful. The goal for both of us here is just really to empower our listeners to understand that it's not doom because there's a diagnosis of diabetes. It's just really trying to figure out how to eat, what to eat, and when to eat makes a big difference. So I have a question for you, Jane. So when people talk about with diabetes, oh, I can't eat late night, or it matters having breakfast. Breakfast is the best, I heard it growing up that breakfast is the number one meal, or all these things that we hear about the timing. Does that play a role? So we talked about what we eat and how we pair it up, right? But what's about the timing? Does that matter? What is your experience and what do you share with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it's absolutely imperative if you have diabetes or if you have insulin resistance, PCOS, anything like that, that you start your day with a well-balanced breakfast. And I'm not talking about sugary cereal. That's going to give you like that crash like we talked about. I'm not talking about just a single food for breakfast, just a tiny breakfast. I want you to have a well-balanced, pretty decent sized breakfast to set you up for the day. And timing absolutely matters, because your body is actually more insulin sensitive in the morning versus at night. And so you're going to be able to process those carbohydrates and release that insulin like you need to a little bit better than in the morning and than at night. So if you want to have if you want to incorporate carbs, do it more heavily in the morning than you would do at night.
Yeah, very good. And again, when we talk about carbs, I mean, people are like, oh, carbs, they said carbs is bad, carbs is bad. Okay, not all carbs are the same. When we talk about carbs, we're talking about whole grain carbs, right? So carbs where nothing is added into it, nothing is taken out of it. When we talk about white flour, white rice, any of those, just be mindful that they're not intact. Right. So when you see a brand, you have the outer layer, the fiber layer, and other aspects. So we're talking about things like, brown rice, quinoa, all those other things, oats and stuff like that. So when we're talking about carbs, those are the carbs that are whole grain. Now, certainly, as a dietitian, I know that you talk about this all the time about the different veggies being starchy and non-starchy. So these are conversations that I know that your patients, right, your clients get to understand the difference of what the different meals they're eating. So it's so important to understand what is on your plate. You referred to it being balanced, but we also want it to be minimally processed, right? Because the more processed it is, there's more salt, more sugar, and unhealthy fats. So I want to ask and just throw it back at you in terms of what will be considered. We talked about carbs now, and people kind of get an understanding of it. But what's about fats? Is all fats created the same? You did say pairing up with fat. So is seed oil fats good one, or is it olive oil? What will be your own, what will be your recommendation?
Yeah, so when we talk about fats, we say healthy fats, unhealthy fats, as like a general label. What we really mean is, if we're to look at it scientifically and objectively, we would call those saturated fats and unsaturated fats. Then there's a whole third category called trans fats, which we don't really talk about anymore because they've been banned by the FDA, so they're no longer in our food system through processed foods, but they can still exist naturally in meats and stuff like that. So with the two main fat groups, it's unsaturated and saturated. Saturated is the one that we don't want a whole lot of. Um, I think the American Heart Association says to limit saturated fats to about 12 grams a day. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that. And then these are the kinds of foods like butter, like real butter, the fat that you see on animals, the like on a steak, on meat, the fat that you would see in a lot of processed foods could be saturated fat. You can just read the label, it'll say how much saturated fat is on there.
Yeah.
The other category of that is this unsaturated fat, and these are the oils that are liquid at room temperature, like the avocado oil, olive oil, canola oil. This also includes what we call as seed oils. Now, there's a lot of discourse on that in the influencer community, the nutrition influencer community, and they're all calling it inflammatory and toxic. But when you look at the research, there is actually no research to support that it is inflammatory and toxic. The research is actually leaning towards seed oils being heart healthy. And that is because it is an unsaturated fat. Unsaturated fats, another exa another example would be like we already said avocados. These are, the fats that you would see in like a very picturesque representation of like if you type in healthy fats.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, that's a little bit about the fats. And it is really important in diabetes. We often leave that out of the conversation because we always think diabetes is sugar, diabetes is carbs.
Yeah, but the reason why we bring it up is because it's not just one thing, right, that makes your insulin resistant. Again, the whole idea is what is making the insulin, why is it not responding as well as it needs to respond? Because the physiology is, you eat, insulin is produced. It gets rid of the sugar into the blood, from the bloodstream into the cells. But there's several things. Food is certainly a big role. It plays a big role. There are three main things. Food is one, just lack of activity. And the other one is just stress altogether. So all those things. And now, of course, there's alcohol, there's smoking, those other things. So when it comes to just looking at food as a whole, we need to also be mindful of the different fats, because if we have unhealthy fats, we tend to lean more towards like the avocados, the olives, those other oils, because they have less of the inflammatory, although again, there's back and forth about those terminologies, but we want to prioritize more of the healthier fats, because I personally have seen that the more avocados I eat, my body actually is able to process. When I've used, and we're going to talk about the glucose monitor, when I've put those on, I've seen that my glucose is not as high when after a meal, because it's metabolized faster and it helps my insulin to be more sensitive. So while we're talking about the glucose monitor, is that something that you talk to your patients about? Do you encourage them to get that? It's no longer a prescription. So most of the time it's a prescription, but some people can get it without a doctor's prescription. Is that something that you advocate for when you're working with your clients?
Absolutely. I love using those because I love seeing the data. Now, I will say if you don't have insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, and you're not diabetic or pre-diabetic, it might not be the best investment to go that route because they are kind of pricey, even if you if you want to pay for it out of pocket without the prescription. I think it's like $99 for the Dexcom Stello. Um, but with the people who I see who are insulin resistant or pre-diabetes or diabetes, those are they gain a lot of insight from them. I always tell people you have to become the expert in your body when it comes to managing diabetes. I'm not the expert in your body when it comes to managing diabetes. I'm the expert in, all things nutrition and what the research tells us, but I need you to learn about your body and how you respond to different foods. And that's what the continuous glucose monitor will give you.
Yes, yes. I do agree absolutely. And then this is also a controversial conversation about some doctors. I know, again, as a family doctor, I was trained in the traditional care system, and we were told that yeah, it's only people that have even pre-diabetes, we would even give them a glucose monitor to monitor, I mean, the finger prick. So it was only people that were in full blown. But again, because of the additional training that I've gotten as a lifestyle medicine physician and obesity medicine physician, I have since learned that prevention is better than cure. And we don't necessarily have to only reserve it for people that have pre-diabetes, because there's a lot of data that you can gather from it. Now, of course, there's an expense, but I do agree that I agree that it's an investment, but it's an investment that will save you later down in line. So when I wore it again, solidarity with my husband who was diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So I really wanted to see, and it really made a difference. I've heard of people who didn't have diabetes or pre-diabetes, and just wearing it stopped them from drinking Coke. They would drink a can of Coke a day. And then when they wore it, of course, they paid for it out of pocket. Again, the value of money is what you do with it. Paid out of pocket. And they saw that their glucose monitor, anytime they drank a Coke, it spiked all the way to 600. And then that kept them from drinking it. Yeah. So I've changed my school of thought, where if a patient comes, I encourage it that this might help you get some insight. I am data driven. So I don't just say you have to be pre-diabetic or diabetes. I think it can help people that have a family history or really trying to prevent them from getting there. Because again, the science, it's not about sick medicine. It's about how do we create and promote wellness. So I'm glad that you use it in your practice. But again, for people that are listening, if it is something that you want, you might have that pushback from your provider, depending on how they were trained, but you can get it off the counter. You don't need a prescription. So that's the good news on that. And it just gives you some information. Pretty much you just put it on your arm. It runs for about 2 weeks. You see the data right away on your phone as you eat. It tells you real life, what's happening with the foods that you eat. Certainly with the things that we talked about with the nutrition, right? If you're eating a fiber-rich food, you see that the spike is not as high. If you're drinking things just like soda, like that guy who just stopped altogether, you see that your numbers go up so high. So yeah, I think we've talked a lot about nutrition. Was there any last few words you wanted to add to nutrition before we talk about the power of just movement and sleep and other lifestyle?
Oh, I have a good nugget for movement. So let's go ahead and jump into that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, I can go ahead and share my nugget for movement.
Go
So
ahead.
I do try to practice what I preach.
Good.
Like, let me put you on to this idea of a movement menu.
Nice.
Everybody listening to go like right now, don't even wait until after
Okay.
after this segment. Go ahead and pull out your phone, start a notes app, start a note thing and title it movement menu. And what this is you're gonna list out a bunch of different activities that you like to do.
Okay.
Something to get your body moving. I don't like to call it exercise because when I hear the word exercise, I think of something very regimented, uh,
Mhm.
structured, and movement doesn't have to be like that. Movement can be you taking a walk, moving, dancing around in your living room. One of the things on my movement menu is learning a TikTok dance.
Oh, nice.
It
Love
gets my
it.
body moving. I have fun with it. And it's something that I can do on days when I don't feel like going out to go to the gym, and don't feel like putting a whole lot of effort into it. Um, so, and you can categorize the different things on your movement menu by these are a list of things I can do when it's raining out, when
Yeah.
it's cold out, when it's hot out, and maybe on days when I have more energy to go out and go to the gym or go out and play pickleball. These are the different kinds of things I can do on a higher energy day. So categorize your movement menu like that, and just every day, I want to challenge you every day, look at your movement menu, order something off of that list.
I love it. Order from that list. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this. I've never heard that this way. I mean, I do agree with you in terms of exercise makes people like go like, oh, all I think about is sweat and pain, but I've never heard it put this way as a movement menu and order out of it. Thank you. I've created mine already. Yes, order out of the movement menu. Lovely. And, just to add to what you just said, when it comes to movement, oh my goodness, it's one of the most powerful things that we can do to prevent diabetes or even treat, or if you're in the goal to reverse. It's as simple as after a meal, please do your best. If you eat well, you shouldn't have a crash. But whichever case, just move. Move, don't sit down, because the more you move, like recently I just got up and I like to get up. I don't like sitting down for too long because our muscle is a metabolic organ. It pumps, it contracts, and it contracts. You can imagine what happens if it uses that glucose efficiently. So after a meal, I just like Jane has charged you. I want to charge you that when you, after a meal, even if it's just pacing around, just pace or do what we call calf raise. So you do that because the muscle of the legs are very strong muscle. And there was a recent study that came out about a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw that, Jane, where it said that the legs, the more stronger the legs are, the stronger the brain. Did you see that? Where they said it's tied that stronger legs correlate to a stronger brain, cognitive function. So just calf raises, it increases blood flow, pacing around. I remember one of my senior colleagues, and I always talk about this story. He had diabetes, but his diabetes was always controlled because after a meal, he went for a mile. And it was so effective that his glucose would be so low that he would have to drink something to restore him just because of his 1 mile. Really lean guy, did really well, never had a complication because he just moved. He just kept moving. It was a nice move for him. So definitely want to encourage, whether you have diabetes or not, just move, just keep moving. keep moving, because there's a lot of benefits to moving. Mental health, it helps to mobilize that glucose because it's not meant to be in the bloodstream. Because if it stays in the bloodstream, it causes a lot of damages to the vessels, right? That's where all the complications of diabetes comes about. All right, very good. All right, let's talk about sleep. I think we have just a few more minutes. We'll just talk about sleep and stress management. And I'll give you an opportunity to share about how people can stay in touch with you.
Okay, sure. So sleep is something I will touch on if you come to an appointment with me. Because I'm a dietitian. I don't specialize in sleep, but I can't ignore that part of your health. Because it really affects so much. If you have diabetes and you don't sleep well, that's really going to affect your A1C. That's going to affect all the different systems in your body. I mean, sleep is not a time of when your body is it is rest, but think of it as active rest. Your body is actively trying to repair things, trying to get you ready for the next day. And if you don't allow your body to sleep, it's not going to have the opportunity to actively do all that.
Yeah, that is so paramount what you just said. Very essential. It's actively doing something for us. Yeah, I think I read it somewhere where sleep is so powerful that you're actually actively doing something and you're unconscious. Can you imagine doing something and being unconscious at the same time? That is so powerful because there's a lot of healing and repair that takes place. And I know, personally speaking, that when I sleep and I sleep really well, I don't have all the sweet cravings that I have during the day. So, which of course would decrease how much weight I gain and how much unhealthy foods, right? So it's a ripple effect. So definitely, please, for listeners, sleep is so essential in managing your glucose. The key thing with my practice, and I emphasize to my patients as a lifestyle medicine doctor, is that when you don't sleep, what happens is that you increase your cortisol and insulin resistance. Yep, they're one and the same. So cortisol is good because it helps us get things going, but it's not supposed to stay continuously high. And when we sleep, melatonin is high, cortisol is supposed to be down. But when we're not sleeping, our cortisol is high because it's like, okay, what are we supposed to be doing? Activity going. And then that also causes, our insulin resistance worsening. So we definitely, if anything at all, we need to emphasize that we sleep, the hours we emphasize, in case people are wondering so what does sleep look like? Well, the studies do show between 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep. So anywhere around there definitely is the sweet spot.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm glad you brought up cortisol, because that is something that can make you like kind of resistant to losing weight.
Mhm.
And one of the things that can help with cortisol from a nutrition standpoint is eating breakfast. So that's why I emphasize so much eating a balanced breakfast. Make sure it has, yes, you can have carbs at breakfast, but make sure it also has protein, make sure it also has fiber, healthy fats. All of that combined together is gonna make your blood sugars more stable for the rest of the day, and it's gonna help bring down your cortisol levels.
Yeah, definitely making sure that your cortisol stays at there's several spikes, I would say, or peaks with cortisol, right? When you wake up, it comes up because your melatonin is going down. So cortisol comes up to get you about your day, but then it comes down and it goes up. And then towards the evening, it does come down again. So yeah, certainly. And that will go for stress management too, right? The more stressed we are, the higher our cortisol levels are. And that would also cause us to gain weight around the midsection. So there's all those things. Now, I do want to ask you, because of your area of expertise in terms of breakfast. So certainly for me, I'm not a big breakfast person. I used to be when I was much younger. But I understand now, though, that the first meal I have is breaking my fast. So that's hence the word breakfast. But I am very mindful that my first meal that I eat is somewhere around 10 or 11, is healthy meals like we've always been talking about. So if somebody was listening to everything that we said, and I think we have a question, very good, very good. Thanks for that question. We're going to answer it. So if somebody was asking you, so I want to come and see you at your practice, Jane, at Habits Nutrition Counseling, but I don't eat breakfast. My first meal is at 10, 11. Does that mean I can't see you? You're going to completely condemn me, kind of thing. So what are your thoughts? Because for me, again, it's not one size fit all. As long as when you eat your meal, you're still having an adequate amount of foods and your foods are nourishing and nutritious. How would you respond to that person listening? Because again, there's this back and forth about breakfast being the most So what are your thoughts?
No, that's so funny that you put it that way because I get a lot of people who come to me and they're nervous that I'm gonna be the food police and I'm just gonna shame them and make them feel guilty. And what a lot of people will do is the week before they come see me, they'll eat so good. They'll eat, what they think they're supposed to do, which a lot of times is misguided. A lot of times it'll be like no carbs, no fruit. But they'll think that they're eating so good because they want to do that the week before they come see me to impress me. But I tell everyone just come as you are. Come as you are. That way we'll have more to work with. We'll have more, to look at and adjust. And that's why you're seeing me, right? Like if you're already gonna do all the things, you don't need to come see me. So come as you are. Don't worry about there is no shame, no room for shame, no room for guilt here, no room for judgment. Coming from any dietitian. And if you do feel any kind of judgment or shame from any of your clinicians, go find another one.
Yeah, I agree completely. Absolutely. So I love that you said that. So it's not one size fit all. We definitely have to sit with you and see what's your unique, situation. You're not eating breakfast and waiting to 10. Does that serve you? Does it not serve you? And then figure out the right, thing for you. So I like that you said that. Thank you so much. So we have a question and then we'll start wrapping it up. So I don't know. So the question is, are non-insulin meds like Ozempic, well, actually, there are two questions. So the first one was, are non-insulin meds like Ozempic, Manjaro better than actual insulin? Okay, so that's one question. And the second question, Jane, I'll let you take the second one. It says, people are ingesting over-the-counter CMOS tablets. Are you familiar with the CMOS tablets? Those are CMOS. It's a natural thing. You're not familiar with sea moss. So it's a natural thing. It's a natural herb that they say slows down glucose spikes. So let me answer the first question, and then if you wanted to do a quick Google search on what sea moss. So it's spelled SEA moss. So let me answer the first question. And so the question is all the GLP-1s better than the actual insulin? Okay, so I would say, because both of us are data-driven people, we follow the data. It's been shown in terms of helping insulin stability that it's much better than insulin because of how the A1C improvement. So how do we know if something is better? It's how it improves your A1C. And remember, we mentioned at the very beginning what an A1C is. An A1C is what is used to track our diabetes to see if there's some form of insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity. So with the insulin on its own, whenever you're given insulin, is because your own body's insulin is not responding very well. So we give it. But the truth of the matter is that you're just masking the problem. So if you're still not eating well, not exercising, not sleeping, they can give you all the insulin in the world, but it's just masking. It's just bringing down that glucose. But then if you keep throwing sand on the wall and you don't get to the root cause of the problem, it doesn't matter how much cleaning you're doing, you have to get to the root cause. So for the insulin, there are some side effects to insulin. Sometimes it does make people gain weight. I've had patients tell me, but with the GLP, which is the Ozempic, those are GLP-1s. Those are, our body naturally makes those peptides. And what happens is that with the pharmaceutical company, they just made it longer lived. so that you can have it in your system for a week instead of what our body just holds on for a short period. And the data that they show with that, with all the people that were on it doing the trials, they found out that it reduced the A1C much because you weren't eating as much. So in terms of, is it better? Does it improve insulin and insulin resistance? It certainly does. But as both of us will agree, that it doesn't do it in the absence of lifestyle habits, because if you ever get off those medicines and you never learned how to eat and how to movement menu, you're going to gain back the weight. So I hope that that's helpful. I would like, do you want it to do for the CMOS? Have you seen anything about it? Did you want to respond to that?
I've heard about it
Okay.
colloquially, but I haven't heard about it in research. And I just did
Okay.
a PubMed search
Okay.
with two keywords, CMOS and blood sugar and CMOS
Okay.
and diabetes.
Okay.
I wasn't able to find any articles really, unless CMOS goes by a different name in the scientific community. So with any supplements, I really want to caution everyone about
Hmm.
taking supplements because a lot of them just don't have enough data to back up their effectiveness. Yes, it might work for some people, and if a supplement doesn't have any major like harmful effects, I say try it out. If you're okay with the investment, if you're okay with taking it, try it out and see if it works for you. If you don't see any difference, then you don't have to keep taking it. But as
Yeah.
far as a like in the research, there is not a lot of evidence to support the benefits.
Yeah, and I just did a search as well, just like you did. So CMOS, again, like I've seen some people that do the CMOS, they make it in their kitchen, and there's been lots of rave about what it does. So it says CMOS is a red seaweed that is 80% water, and it's a source of fiber, phytochemicals, omega-3 fatty acids. But again, like Jane already said, when it comes to supplements, there's nothing backing it up. Some people say it works, some people say it doesn't. But again, in terms of tablets, I've never heard about how that helps to control glucose, other than maybe people are saying that it's worked, maybe because of the fiber that it has. Again, remember, we already talked about your natural foods. If you're eating natural foods that have high fiber, you're staying hydrated, you're moving, that is just equally as good.
Yeah, and I always push real foods first, and
Mm-hmm.
then supplements can be added on once if on top of a already healthy balanced diet. Because supplements are meant to fill the gaps of
Yeah.
your diet, but if your gaps are too big, they're just gonna fall right through, if that makes sense.
Yes. I like that. If the gaps are too big, then hence the word supplement. It's just supposed to supplement, but if the gaps are already so huge, then you're gonna need, can you imagine if your gap is this wide? Then how much supplements are you even going to put in there? It's not even going to work. Yes. So awesome. We've had a great conversation today. Thank you. I'm so honored to, be in your presence and co-hosting with me today. Want to give you an opportunity to share how people can get in touch with you, which part of town, what kind of patients you're seeing, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this segment today. I had a lot of fun just chatting. I can talk about nutrition all day.
Right.
But again, to those who are listening, my name is Jane Guo. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm the founder of Habits Nutrition Counseling. I help people achieve lasting weight loss and better health by building sustainable lifestyle habits. And that's the key, lifestyle habits. You're not going to get healthier by doing a 30-day juice cleanse, a 30-day whatever diet. That's not going to serve you in the long run. I teach people to build those habits so that they can continue having low A1C, the weight, maintain the weight that they want to be at for the long term. And clients, if you want to work with me, I'll share some things that clients who work with me say. They often feel less overwhelmed with all the different nutrition information out there. It's having a dietitian. It's like consolidating your nutrition source into one person, into one source, rather than getting some nutrition information from this website, that website, from this clinician, your doctor with the handouts, and this friend and that Facebook group. That is all a lot to absorb, and not all of that could be truthful, evidence-based information. So having a dietitian, working with them, it all just makes things a lot simpler for you. And you get tailored nutrition strategies that are tailored to what you need. Clients say they're able to confidently make food choices that are best for them. That's my goal for you, is to be so confident in being able to make food choices, whether you're at a holiday party, at any restaurant, at the grocery store. I want you to be so confident at making food choices that you don't need me anymore. That's the ultimate goal. That's probably not the best from a business standpoint, but I want you to work with me until you don't need me anymore. That's my goal for you. Um, a lot of people will say they often feel after working with me, they feel like they have more energy to tackle all the things that they want to do in their life. And then also their relationships improve because you're able to show up as your truest self, your best self with the most energy. Your cup is full. Then you're able to pour into the cups of those around you, those that you love. So if you're ready to take action, the first step I want you to do is, if you want to work with me, is visit my website. You can learn more about me there. You can book a call if you're ready. I want to really say, don't wait until after the holidays. I know the holidays are coming up and people are like, oh, I'll do it in January, but there's always going to be holidays coming up. There's going to be Valentine's Day coming up. Oh, I'll do it after Valentine's Day. Oh, I'll do it after Easter. I got a cruise booked for this summer. I'll do it after the cruise. Oh, my birthday's coming up. I'll do it after my birthday. There's never going to be a perfect time to invest into your health. The best time to start taking action was yesterday, maybe even a few years ago. But the second best time is today. So don't wait until the next best time tomorrow. Do something about your health today. And that something could be even like making the movement menu that we talked about. So really, really want to encourage everybody to just take home some of these nuggets of information, do something about your health today.
Awesome. Well said. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you again for your time with me. I really appreciate all the great nuggets that you shared. I've definitely created my movement menu. So looking forward to putting that into action. And so for everybody, you've heard it. We've spent time today just impacting knowledge, but not just knowledge, but skill sets, things that you can do that can help you. I'm Dr. Babs, your host for the Holistic Perspective. Thank you again for joining us. The question for the hour was, what is your role? What role are you playing in decreasing the narrative around the increase of prediabetes and diabetes within your community? All right. Every tiny step of improvement makes the difference, and it's always progress over perfection. All right. So this is our last session for the year. I want you all to have a marvelous holiday. Make sure you make wise choices. And I leave you with this nugget. Diabetes is a great example whereby, given the patient the tools, you can manage yourself very well. And that was from Clayton M. Christensen. So everyone have a wonderful